Everybody, and welcome into a new edition of the Patriots Beat podcast here on the CLNS Media Podcast Network. I'm Evan Lazar, joined as always by Alex Barth. And Alex, the question coming off the heels of this 54-13 beatdown of Bill Belichick's favorite opponent, the New York Jets, has to be, what can the Patriots replicate offensively from the 54-point outburst moving forward? We know some of this. And not to throw him under the bus right off the top of the show, but Brandon Bolden's not going to have 80 receiving yards against every team in the league, right? And that's something.
He might, if they give him 70 catches, if they give him 70 targets, which we can't rule out, he might get to 80 yards.
What can they replicate, though? Because the Bolden yards and the Bolden plays out of the backfield, sure, maybe some of that stuff carries over, but he's not going to have that kind of production each and every week. But there has to be certain elements, certain foundational pieces that they can build on moving forward.
Yeah, I think that's certainly the focus this week. When I did my show with Matt Dolph earlier today, which you can hear on 985thesportshub.com or subscribe to 985 Patriots audio on wherever you get your podcast.
Nice plug.
Thank you. We opened the show with Matt, actually, this is very clever. He called it the ITJ disclaimer. ITJ. It's the Jets.
Yeah.
And, when you talk about the great moments from this game, everything comes with that disclaimer. That being said, you talk about, well, what can they replicate? I think the overall offensive philosophy of that game was different than what we've seen for extended periods of time. We've seen it in spurts, but was different for extended periods of time in that game than what we've seen previously this season. And this is where we'll get into, and I've talked about this on the show, Evan, because you're kind of new to the being aware that Josh McDaniels maybe isn't all he's quite cracked up to be. Josh McDaniels, great play designer. It's when he uses them that sometimes bites him, but he'll give you a gem once or twice a season where you truly see his potential, not just as a play designer, but as a play caller. The question is this just one of those McDaniels gems, or does he finally... And it's not all on him, to be fair. It might be, Mac Jones had to learn the offense. Some of these other new pieces had to learn the offense. But is everybody now on the same page? Does this offense truly know what their potential can be? Because regardless of the opponent, the approach the offense took to that game was excellent.
Yeah.
Right? Where they're design plays for Jonnu Smith. They're focusing the ball to Hunter Henry. Kendrick Bourne got involved more, which is something that I think is huge, because I think he's a guy that we may not, he's still on the ascension to me. I think Kendrick Bourne, there's more to unlock with him, and I'm sure we'll get into him more so later as the show goes on. But I think the overall offensive approach is something you can feel really good about. The other thing to me I take away from this game, and I know some people are hating on the Patriots for this, I'm not going to, the celebration after the game, right? Everybody's so worked up on the sideline. Bill goes and grabs a beer with Matt Patricia in the Optum Club after the game. I would honestly be more upset about that if they were 4-2 or 5-1.
Yeah.
Why are you making a big deal of beating the Jets when you've beat other good teams? But, I think for a basketball player, sometimes when the shot's not going down, you just got to see one go in.
Yeah.
Even if it's a wide open layup, you just got to see one go in to get yourself right mentally. I think the Patriots just needed to see one go in. I think they need to experience a win. They've come so close so many times. I think it was cathartic. I think it was therapeutic. I honestly think the way they reacted after that game, I think some people looking at it as, well, if they're celebrating a win this big, like they're clearly overlooking other opponents. No, I think it was more so a vibe of, hey, soak this in. Like, remember this feeling. This is why we're putting in all that work. This is what we're chasing. So, those are my two big takeaways from this game: the offense philosophy and the way the team reacted.
I think the basketball comparison is a perfect one, because Carmen Brasillo talked about this today, the Patriots offensive line coach, with the offensive line being able to have that feeling of having it all click and knowing what it can feel like and what it can look like when it all comes together like that, and that you are capable against a defense that, granted, is not a good defense in the Jets, but the Jets' season high in points allowed coming into this game was 27. The Patriots doubled that up, right? So the
one thing I would push back on there, and I'm sure we'll get into this a little bit later because I'm sure you want to talk about the offensive line, but if there's one thing the Jets do well, it's that defensive front. And they held John Franklin Myers in check before he got hurt. Look, I think it's, they beat the Jets, sure. But they beat the Jets like a good team beats the Jets.
Right.
Do you want that 25-6 performance, that hard fought, It honestly kind of was a hard-fought win against the Jets where you had to get gifted 4 turnovers by Zach Wilson. Or do you want this? This is how Tom Brady would have beat the Jets. This is how a good team beats the New York Jets. It's not that I'm not saying, oh, the Patriots are a good team because they beat the Jets. I'm saying the Patriots are a good team because they beat the Jets by 40 points and blew the doors off them.
Right.
That's why.
So, and the first point that you made about the offensive philosophy, I think is really important as well, because first of all, on a positive note, Josh McDaniels was in his bag this entire game, between the Jonnu Smith wrinkles to some of the different formations that they were running. They brought out a lot of new tricks in this game. I'm not talking about trick plays. I'm just talking about formation wrinkles, Jonnu Smith play calls.
A direct middle finger to you, by the way.
I loved it, right? I loved it. This is what we've been waiting for all season long.
Well, wait, can I give the context of that? Or do you want to give it?
Yeah, so I asked Bill Belichick on Wednesday press conference last week, how the Patriots could incorporate Jonnu Smith more in their passing offense moving forward, because clearly he was not being used enough, right? He was being underutilized as a receiver. And Bill went on this rant, as he typically does when we ask him these types of questions, about how they're not designing the passing offense to get the football to one guy, right? It's a 5-man route combination. You read it out, you throw to the open guy, you win the whole thing, leverage, reads, all this kind of stuff. And they come out in the first quarter against the Jets, and 7 of the first 9 touches, I think it was, go to Jonnu Smith. And I was just like, all right, well, maybe I struck a nerve, right? Maybe he knew in the back of his mind that they had this game plan, an opening script that was very Jonnu heavy, and he was like, didn't want to put the Jets on the scent, right? He didn't want to get up there and say, oh yeah, we got to get Jonnu the football, and then have the Jets key on Jonnu for the full entire game. Maybe that was it.
Or maybe that wasn't the game plan, and then he heard you ask the question and just thought, F this kid. You want Jonnu Smith?
Maybe I should keep asking them questions. But it was so the Jonnu wrinkle, right? The formational wrinkles. Jonnu had fullback, some of the go-go stuff that they did with Jakob Johnson, an RPO in there, some play action out of the gun. I mean, just so many different wrinkles, and just the vast expansion of the playbook from the run game to the pass game. Everything was called in this game, everything. And I think some people look at that and they say, why waste this on the Jets? But I actually look at it differently, because as somebody that gets into Patriots game planning, and every Friday I write the game plan out of what I think the Pats will do, when I watch other teams, if I can figure out the 4 or 5 things that they're going to try to do every single week, then Bill Belichick and an NFL head coach or coaching staff can figure those things out. When you give teams 10 to 15 things to think about versus 5 things to think about, you become a much more difficult offense to game plan for and defend. So now the Patriots have put on tape over the last couple of weeks, but mainly against the Jets, so many different ways that they can play offense, so many different ways that they can attack you, so many different receivers they can throw the football to. And you start to think about all these different things, and it becomes a lot harder to prepare for them week in and week out. Now, the last thing I'll say on this point is there is absolutely zero excuse now moving forward for Josh McDaniels to go back into his bunker, right? Exactly. I know the Jets are the Jets, but if the Patriots, who are 3-4 right now, are going to make a run at the playoffs, and if you look at the back half of their schedule, it's not as hard of a schedule as maybe we initially projected a couple of weeks ago or a month ago.
Injuries and whatever.
Right. Yeah. Some of these teams have dropped off. The Chargers are a very good team. We'll talk about them at the end today and then again later in the week. But Cleveland, Carolina, some of these teams have some injuries. Some of these teams are inconsistent. So if they can keep doing what they're doing offensively, like they did against the Jets and even built on a little bit against Dallas as well, then this team can go on a run here. And if they go back into the bunker and they get conservative again and they limit the playbook again, then the Patriots are going to be a team that's, an 8-9, 500 football team. I hate that they can't go 500 anymore, but it throws my numbers off completely. But they're going to be that kind of football team instead of a team that is 10, 11, 12 wins and potentially fighting for a playoff berth here in a couple months.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I'd agree with that.
All right. looking at the offensive line, and then I want to talk about Mac here in a second. As an offensive line guy, it was great to finally see them settle on the offensive line that we have been talking about since when, Alex? Week 2? I would say Trent Brown got hurt.
Yeah, I think I said it in the offseason that they have Ted Karras and they have this flexibility. And
right.
I think we're talking about maybe taking Isaiah Wynn out of the lineup instead of Trent Brown. But yeah, this has been the group we wanted. And I'll go back to what I said before. The Jets are the Jets, but their defensive line borderline legit. Like John Franklin Myers is a player.
Yeah.
And they kept him in check. And
Quentin Williams too.
Yeah, I don't think it's a coincidence. Yeah, sure, their best player. Duh.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a coincidence. Like some of this stuff, okay, it looked really good because you played the Jets. I think the offensive line, and I guess let me ask you this question. I'll phrase it this way. Did the offensive line have their best game of the year because they were playing the Jets or because they debuted this alignment? Which one of those would you say is more of a true statement?
I would say that they had the best game of the year because it was the Jets, but this alignment is something that they can build on moving forward. So I guess that's kind of a cop-out answer, but what I saw out of the line from this game against New York that really got me excited was not necessarily the people moving ability and the displacement that they were putting out there on tape, because some of the double teams and some of the combination blocks that they had with the guard tackle tandems, right, Wynn and Karras, and Onwenu and Mason on the right side were ridiculous. Like they were pushing the Jets 6, 7, 8 yards down the field. You don't see that on NFL tape. You see that when you go and watch guys in college, right? And you scout college offensive linemen, you see them pushing guys 8, 9, 10 yards down the field. Like Christian Darrisaw must have had a million of those on tape last year.
Juwan James, Ohio State, get ready for him.
Yeah, you don't see that on NFL tape too often. So I don't care who you're playing. That's impressive. But looking at the professionalism of this line compared to what we had seen in weeks past with some of the other combinations that they've used, just the hat on a hat, the being on the same page in pass protection, seeing everything through the same set of eyes in both phases of the game, that is what we've been looking for. And you start to look at some of these guys that they have playing now, and with Karras in the starting lineup over Justin Herron or Yasir Durant, they have so much more experience on this line now, right? These guys have all played in a lot of NFL games. A lot of them have played a lot of NFL games for the Patriots. So the experience, the professionalism of this line now is so much better than it is when they didn't have Onwenu at right tackle and Ted Karras in the starting lineup. And this, like I said, there's no excuse for Josh McDaniels to go back into his bunker. There's no excuse for the Patriots to move off of this starting five until Trent Brown comes back. If Trent Brown comes back, this needs to be the starting five on the offensive line for the rest of the season, because there's two metrics I'll throw at you. One, Mac Jones right now, Alex, from clean pockets, 9th best PFF grade in football. 9th best. He's a top 10 quarterback when they keep him clean. Damian Harris in PFF grade right now is the 3rd best running back in the NFL. So when Mac is kept clean and the O-line's making holes for Damian Harris, both of those guys are elite performers. And they can have a really potent offense if they can get this offensive line figured out, which hopefully they did last week.
Yeah, it hurts that it took so long, but I agree with you. I think this, and I would say I think the offensive line had a good game because of the combination, more so than just the fact of playing the Jets. Again, John Franklin Myers, Quentin Williams, these are good players. It's been the key to all of it, right? We've said this from the beginning. If Mac got time and these running backs got some holes, there were going to be opportunities here. We've said this all along, and now it seems like they might be able to do that.
Yeah, and it's great to just see when you have an offensive line that, first of all, Mike Onwenu is an absolute stud. That guy is unbelievable. Wherever
he
they
might be a tackle. I know they want to keep him at guard, and that's his natural position, but he might be a tackle.
Wherever they put him, he's freaking good, right? It doesn't matter. His run blocking, he was snatching people in this game. I mean, it was crazy. It was crazy how much movement they were getting. But the finishing of the offensive line was also probably the most important part of it, was they went out there with an agenda to just physically impose their will against the Jets. And they were finishing blocks. They were finishing guys into the ground. They were blocking double teams 8, 9, 10 yards down the field. And then once you start getting that into that, then you start incorporating the play action passing game. Then you start incorporating some of the screen designs that they ran. And all of a sudden it all starts to work out and it all starts to click. Mac Jones off of play action, 12 of 16 for 11.1 yards per attempt. And I know all the nerds, my fellow nerds, are going to yell at me and say, you don't have to run the ball effectively to be good at play action. I don't think you get to 11.1 yards per attempt on play action if you have zero threat of a running game. It just doesn't add up the way that the tape usually shakes out. So they get the run game going. They get the Jets on their heels in that respect, and then it opens up the rest of the playbook. It opens up the play action passing attack, and that's really how this offense is built. We talked about the play calling off the top of the show. We've talked about how this offense was built. Although I've been reluctant to go that style, go that route in 2021, if you can be an effective play action passing attack off of that run game like they were on Sunday against the Jets, then you can score 50 plus points with that type of offense against a bad team, right? So this formula moving forward of incorporating all of their new weapons, right? Not just one, but all of their new weapons, and getting the run game going and getting the offensive line going downhill, that this is how the Patriots wanted to play football when they drew this up back in March and April.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about. It was the blueprint. It was that blueprint we kept talking about in I mentioned like when they signed a couple of these guys, I said, well, it's going to come down to how they use them. They're talented, but they have to be used correctly in the scheme. And we didn't see that earlier in the season. Now, in the offensive line just affords them more opportunities where now they can use these players the way that schematically they probably should have been using them all along.
Yeah. So I want to turn the page to Mac now a little bit. And I posted an article this morning about not limiting Mac Jones's ceiling because Alex, you can vouch for this. I was not the biggest believer in Mac Jones until he got into training camp and I really started to get on the bandwagon, right? And back in the pre-draft, I wasn't the biggest Mac guy, and he has proved me wrong every single step of the way. And I think people that have come out against Mac Jones, they keep on moving the goalposts, right? And my good friend Chris Gasper, him and I went back and forth on Twitter for a long time today about this. And the problem that I have with Chris and people's arguments against Mac Jones that are like Chris is that Chris started with Mac Jones being Andy Dalton, right? He's already moved off of Andy Dalton, and now we're up to Mac Jones being Kirk Cousins. Right? We've improved. So if you've, in a short period of time, in just a matter of a couple of months, if Mac Jones has moved you off of Andy Dalton to Kirk Cousins, then who's to say if he could move you off of Kirk Cousins to Matt Ryan or Matt Ryan to the next guy, right? You just don't know anymore because he's exceeding expectations. What you see out of him every single week is more and more and more comfortability and success within structure, within the offense, within the system, and it's impressive. And at this point, I'm not capping his ceiling anymore. I think this kid can be really, really good in the NFL. How good will he be? That only time will tell. I'm done sitting here with the player comps. I'm done sitting here saying, the Patriots offense is going to win in spite of Mac Jones or with Mac Jones, but not because of Mac Jones. I no longer know if that's all we're looking at. We might be looking at something even more.
Man, if you back in October of 2020 could see yourself now,
I know.
Use a third round pick on Mac Jones.
I know.
Wouldn't use a third. They don't need to take him that high. What are you talking about? They don't need to worry about him.
Mea culpa. I own it.
Yeah, no, you do. I respect it. I think, again, I think sometimes the conversation about Mac Jones drifts and you'll have two people arguing opposite points at each other where one person's arguing what he is right now versus another person arguing the ceiling. Like, I think if you want to talk about Matt Ryan as his ceiling, that's fine. He's probably more Kirk Cousins right now. He still has room to grow. And that's the other thing too. I think when I say Mac Jones still has room to grow, I mean that as a compliment. I mean that as a good thing. I mean that as something Patriots fans should be excited about. Mac Jones having room to grow means the guy you're seeing now is going to get better. But I think some people see that and it sets them off and it pisses them off by, what do you mean Mac Jones is going to get better? Like, he's already so good. Why does he have to be better? Like, no, that's not how any of this works. Rookies get better. You know who was really good as a rookie and then just plateaued was Andrew Luck. And, you know, you want to know a dirty little secret of like mid-2010s NFL? Andrew Luck wasn't a very good quarterback. He put up a ton of numbers because he threw the ball 60 times a game. Evan, he got picked off a ton.
Yeah, he had a lot of interceptions, but he was also trying to elevate a team around him that wasn't very good, so he had to take some more chances, I would say.
Well, so the fact that he didn't get better isn't necessarily his fault.
Yeah.
That's what I would say. He was in a position that stunted his growth, but if you, like, your rookie quarterback I'll say this, Mac Jones should have a better career than Andrew Luck had. He should. 100% he should. Because when you look at your rookie quarterback, saying the rookie quarterback is going to get better or needs to get better, whatever adjective or adverb or whatever you want to use, that's a good thing. The rookie quarterback should get better. There should be higher expectations for him than what he's doing right now. Where the excitement comes from is he's starting with such a high base. And that's why people were so excited about Mac Jones in the draft. Yeah, he may not have had the raw upside of a guy like Justin Fields or a guy like Zach Wilson, for instance, but Zach Wilson was all upside. You would have coached him up. It's nature versus nurture, right? Zach Wilson was a pure nurture draft pick. He was only going to be as good as the situation he was put in. And unfortunately for him, he was put on the New York Jets. So his career was basically over on April 30th or April 31st or whatever it was. Mac Jones is working with so much of his own ability that he comes in with, that he brings in, that he's starting at such a high point. And now there's the excitement of, all right, how much better is he going to get? And luckily for him, he's not on the Jets or he's not on the early 2010s Colts. He's in a situation that's going to nurture him and properly develop him and allow him to get better.
So I want to, John Doe here comments on this every single show. So I just want to, I'm going to wear this right now. Yes, I was a Justin Fields guy. You are not, the cat's not out of the bag on this one. Like you're not getting one over any of us right now. I was a Justin Fields guy, but to Alex's point, is Justin Fields, is his career going to go in a bad direction or a not so good direction compared to Mac Jones?
Is Matt Nagy, so
because he's in Chicago, right? So I'm not saying that Mac Jones has it easy just because he has Bill Belichick. I'm just saying Justin Fields might not have it as easy or might not have as good of a career a lot in that as Matt Nagy. But I think the biggest part of all of this with the Justin Fieldses and the Trey Lances and the Zach Wilsons is we have lost sight as football people when we evaluate these guys in the draft and we evaluate these quarterbacks in the NFL. We have lost sight of the most important traits for any quarterback. And that is what you do in structure, what you're doing in the system, because the conversation has now become more about how do you elevate the scheme? And I think a lot of people make elevating the scheme out to be the Patrick Mahomes roll into his right, throw into his left, 60 yards down the field and playmaking outside the pocket and the off-platform throws. That's becoming now the only way that you can elevate your offense or you can make it better to people. Whereas the reality of the situation is that playmaking inside the pocket and the ability to go through your reads quickly and the ability to throw the ball accurately down the field and just make the right decisions has become so boring that that's no longer appealing. It's no longer fun. It's no longer good enough to a lot of people, because being able to just make the right decision within the pocket is not good enough anymore. You need to do more. And my pushback on that would be that even if you look at a guy like Patrick Mahomes, who has maximized everything in the NFL for his ability, right? 90% or maybe 80% of his passing yards in an NFL season or touchdowns in an NFL season come within structure, within the framework of the system that he's operating in. And we're harping on the 10%, the 20% that isn't in structure. And I really feel like we have just completely lost evaluating quarterbacks. I feel like we have completely lost it. And that's why you get Zach Wilson and Trey Lance and all these guys that get picked over Mac Jones in a draft, or even looking back at the draft with Justin Herbert, who they're going to play next week, right? There was Tua goes ahead of Justin Herbert in a lot of ways because of his out of structure playmaking ability. And Herbert wasn't as good out of structure. And now look at it, right? And I just feel like we've completely lost focus of what are the most important traits, what are the most successful traits from Brady to Breeze to Manning to Rodgers to any style of quarterback. The guys that operate the best from the pocket are the guys that have the most NFL success.
So, and I'll say one other thing I think that gets lost in this, and I talked about this a lot during the draft, but I'll bring it back. I think people are now the most important thing for if I'm a vet, and this is across positions, this is across sports. If I'm a talent evaluator, if I'm a scout and I'm looking at a player in the draft or at a player in the free agency, the first thing I look at is how consistent is that player. Forget what he can do on his best day, because to get as far as these guys have gotten, you're going to be able to flash. It goes back to, remember the throw Kellen Mond and Zach Wilson, and they all made on their pro day where they rolled to the left and then turned the shoulders, do about like 80 yards to the right, not in pads. Like, great. That's awesome. If you're going to be a Division I quarterback, you probably should be able to make that throw once in sterile conditions. That throw doesn't tell me anything from an evaluation point of view. Everybody can make that throw, but it's okay when the lights are on and the pads are on and you have a live opponent on the other side and you're in a position to make that throw. Do you complete the pass 1 out of every 10 times?
Right.
5 out of every 10 times? 8 out of
Zach
every
Wilson
10 times?
got drafted number 2 overall from that throw in the pro day. Right, I fully believe that.
And I don't think anybody looked back and said, well, how often does he make this throw in a game? I think they just looked at it and said, he made it. That's awesome. Fantastic. This is what makes Patrick Mahomes made him so special. I don't know what the hell's going on this year, but what made him so special is that circus throw he could make 8, 9 times out of 10. We hadn't seen that before. What makes Tom Brady so special is maybe not those circus throws, but some of the intermediate throws he makes 10 times out of 10. You just didn't see that. Whereas you have a guy, and there were so many, like, is this guy the next Brady? Is that guy the next Brady coming up? And they make the throw like 6, 7 times out of 10, right? Like a Phillip Rivers. Phillip Rivers maybe makes that throw 7 times out of 10, but Brady made it 10 out of 10. Right. And that's where I think a lot got lost in translation is, Zach Wilson makes that throw 1 time out of 10. Justin Fields, probably 5 or 6. Mac Wilson might not make that exact throw, that pro day throw, but there's throws he's going to make 9 times out of 10 that the other quarterbacks are only going to make 6 or 7 times out of 10. And teams are just banking on raw athleticism to make up for that gap. And unless you have a truly rare athlete, and there's one example I can think of, and that's Lamar Jackson.
Right.
Unless you have a truly rare athlete, and I think Lamar Jackson's the best pure ball carrier in the NFL, whatever position. Like, I wouldn't have him return punts because I want him to be healthy, but like, if I could have anybody in the league return a punt, injuries off, it would be Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
Like, unless you have that guy, you're probably not going to make up for that gap. Can we do one side thing here? Because I'm very curious to get your thoughts on this. I
just love the point about because I think it's basically what I'm saying with the in structure versus out of structure stuff.
Right, I just making the same point a different way. Yeah.
The consistency is what it's all about, right? And NFL teams and NFL evaluators, and I'm not saying that I have all the answers because I had Justin Fields rated ahead of Mac Jones and I had Trey Lance rated ahead of Mac Jones, but all of these evaluators are actually getting paid to do this in terms of making these decisions for these NFL teams. They're going to continue to strike out on these quarterbacks at the top of the draft if they continue to chase the one unicorn that is Patrick Mahomes.
And get ready, because this year's quarterback class is all, Mahomes mold.
Right,
it's all raw upside. No,
like that guy, Malik Willis,
Malik Willis is kind of his own thing, just because he's playing at Liberty.
Yeah,
but I'm talking about Matt Corral. I'm talking about Spencer Rattler, Carson Strong. Somebody's going to take Kenny Pickett in like the second round, and it's going to be a great pick.
Yeah.
And I was really out on Kenny Pickett coming into the year. I've been impressed. But anyway, I'm going to give you some quarterbacks here, Evan.
Sure.
And I'm going to give you, this is, I think, 7 or 8 quarterbacks. When it's all said and done, how many of these players, Mac Jones will have a better career than how many of these players? Okay.
Okay.
And I'll tell you what the common link is after I give you the list.
Okay.
David Garrard, Matt Schaub. Oh, we'll go one by one. David Garrard, yes or no? Mac will have a better career.
Yes.
Matt Schaub.
More longevity. Definitely.
Okay. Matt Schaub.
Definitely.
Carson Palmer.
No.
Okay. Alex Smith.
I want to say yes to that one, so I'll say yes.
Yes, Mac has a better career?
Yes.
Okay. Jay Cutler.
Yes.
Cam Newton.
Oh, that one's tough. They play so differently. So
I know. I'll throw that one out because the high point is so high, but his durability. And Andy Dalton.
Better. Yes, better.
Mac is better. Okay.
Yes.
So
Carson Palmer was super underrated.
Carson Palmer's the only one. So what? Yeah. And actually, if I sort this list by one, okay. So this is interesting. So basically, what I did, because I was curious, I kind of made that Andrew Luck comment before off the cuff, and I was just sort of curious.
Yeah.
So I looked up players who had a career passer rating within 5 points of Andrew Luck, who played as many or more games in the same era. And that's the list. Those are Andrew Luck's peers in terms of career passer rating. Dalton, Cam Newton, Jay Cutler, Alex Smith, Carson Palmer, Matt Schaub, David Garrard. And now I feel very confident about 2 things I said earlier. I feel very confident in saying the fact Andrew Luck was overrated throughout his career. And I feel very confident in saying Mac Jones will have a better career than him. Because I'll give you, if he has the same... Schaub's a weird one because he got thrown in a horrible situation. If he has the career Palmer had, or even the career Newton had, a Super Bowl appearance and MVP, he did okay. And I think he'll be way ahead of all those other guys.
Yeah.
But anyway, those are Andrew Luck's peers for what I was surprised. It's not an impressive list. Outside of Cam, it's not an impressive list.
Yeah. Alex Smith, that one's a good, I think Alex Smith has been a comp for a lot of people for a long time with Mac Jones. Similar skill sets, right?
By the way, Carson Palmer is the highest passer rating of any player on that list.
Yeah, Carson Palmer was super underrated. If he got stuck in
he spent his whole career with horrible coaches.
Yeah.
He spent his whole career with horrible coaches.
Anyway. Yeah. Anyways, yeah, it's interesting that I get why people get to the Alex Smith comp, but I really just feel like Mac he's got something else about him from a mental makeup standpoint that I'm not sure Alex Smith ever had, right? Maybe they're comparable in terms of physical raw tool.
Right, it's that it factor.
Right, but that it factor that we've seen out of him so far is something that I just don't know if Alex Smith ever really had that edge to him. And that, Alex Smith had a nice career, right? It's not like Alex Smith had a terrible career. But another question in the chat just really quickly about Matt before we turn the page to the defense is about arm strength. And I see this a lot about can Mac improve his arm strength. First of all, I don't think Mac's baseline arm strength is all that bad, right? Like I think it could definitely improve, and it's certainly not a cannon like Josh Allen or Herbert or Mahomes or someone like that. But he's got enough arm on most of these throws that we see him make every single week. Now, improving arm strength, it definitely is possible, right? You get into an NFL strength and conditioning program, you get into an NFL diet and all those types of things. You also get into something like mechanics and being able to get more torque and hip torque and all that jazz as well. Definitely doable to improve overall raw arm strength, right. But I don't really agree with the narratives that he's got no arm. Like I just don't really see that from what we've seen.
Yeah, I'd agree. It's not the strongest. He doesn't have the strongest arm in the league. I don't think anybody's saying he does have that, but
right,
average, above average. It's funny. I once had a coach tell me that you can add 5 to 10 yards of arm strength, however you want to characterize that.
Yeah.
You can add 5 to 10 yards on mechanical changes alone. Now, I don't know how that applies to Mac Jones because I'm assuming that means from the worst possible mechanics to the best possible mechanics, and Mac's mechanics are already pretty good. I'm sure there's areas they can round him off. I'm not a throwing coach. I don't know. But if he can even get a couple yards on that, his arm's never going to hinder him. I don't know that he's ever solely going to make plays based on how far he can throw the ball. But one, the Patriots offense isn't built to do that.
Yeah.
Unless they go out and sign Tyreek Hill, it's not going to matter. And he can still make all of the throws he needs to make. Like it's not his game. if he starts running around like Mahomes, where he's in spot to make the throws like Mahomes, we have much bigger problems than just Mac Jones' arm strength.
Yeah, and do we want to do a play? Let's do a play.
Let's do a play.
I want to do this play. It is the Kendrick Bourne deep ball, but I think it's like really important to talk about this from a couple of different angles. So the first thing is one of the most important things I would say for attacking single high coverage, as I try to get this to go. There we go. Is just knowing where your one-on-one is and having the trust, the ability, all of it, the confidence to make this throw, right? Because a lot of people put that side by side up of Tom Brady and Mac Jones making this exact same throw essentially on Sunday. And Brady, for all of the things about, how he is great with the processing and the underneath stuff and all that kind of stuff, especially in Tampa and when he's had the weapons in New England, his willingness and his identification of one-on-one matchups on the outside and the way he puts the ball in the receivers is one of the best things about his game, in my opinion. And Mac basically replicates that here. So what you have is this single high safety over here on the far hash, and the Jets are showing this blitz. And this is how teams over the last couple of years, even going back to the Brady era, Alex, have played the Patriots, right? Single high, man-to-man. You put the extra guys in the box to stop the run or send some sort of pressure. And it's caused the Patriots a lot of problems because they haven't had the weapons on the outside to get off of press man. Well, here Mac is going to have Kendrick Bourne at the top of the screen. He's going to have the safety on the far hash, and he's just going to make this throw in the bucket. And the more that Mac Jones makes this play, and the more that the Patriots are letting him, throw this football, right, the more that teams are going to have to think about it. I know this is against the Jets, but if you keep on putting that single high safety up top, and Mac continues to aggressively hunt with the football against man coverage on the outside, and his guys start making plays out there, then the less of that we are going to see. And then that obviously opens up other things. So to me, this is 110% more about the intent than necessarily the result, right? Because he's willing and able to make this throw. And the Patriots are having receivers like Bourne or Aguilar who might be able to win more on this route. And that to me is really one of the most telling things about that entire tape, is that Mac was getting those one-on-one opportunities out on the outside. He was attacking those one-on-one opportunities on the outside. And this goes back to the whole thing of, well, you put this on tape and now teams see this, and now how are they going to react to that? How are they going to change that? And if they continue to give Mac Jones those one-on-ones, then I hope he continues to take them.
Yeah, and again, it's just going to open up more opportunities for the offense, because the more teams have to respect that play, then it's underneath run after the catch opportunities for Jacoby Myers and Jonnu Smith, right? So that's kind of the last key to unlocking this offense. And we thought it would be Nelson Aguilar, and they tried to hit Aguilar deep a couple times on Sunday. It was Kendrick Bourne this week, but that's kind of the last element they need to round out here.
Eventually, they're either going to back off, they're going to go away from press man, they're going to have to take a safety out of the box to play too deep. They're going to have to do something else, right?
Or not. You keep beating him over the top.
Or they keep making a throw, right?
Maybe these defensive coordinators believe that Mac has no arm and they stay in the box, and he'll just keep toasting them over the top. Let him do that.
Okay, so all the positivity about the offense aside, let's move over to the defensive side of the football, where in a weird, strange way, we have flip-flopped here a little bit, right? The offense now seems like the unit that's picking things up and it's trending upwards, and the defense seems to be the average to mediocre side of the football that we're not sure if it's going to get any better than what it is with the personnel that they have. I want to start with two positive notes, though, from watching this game back. The first thing is the Patriots have made a real turnaround on first and second down this season. Last season, they were 30th in the league in yards allowed on first and second down. This season, they are creeping up into the top 10. So they've made a complete turnaround there, and mainly the besides the run defense really improving, and we can get to that in a second as well. The other thing that's really improved a whole lot is the play action passing defense, which I don't think people would have really thought of with this team. Last year, the Patriots were 30th in play action passing. They were giving up 9.4 yards per play action pass attempt as a defense last year. They are over 3 yards better this year. They're at 6.1 yards, which is third in the NFL against play action. So they are making it happen on first and second down. They got to get better on third down, right? That's what's been their Achilles heel so far, 20th and third down efficiency. But the first and second down defense, from the run defense to the play action pass defense on early downs, that's starting to find its way. It's starting to find its rhythm. And that's something that is a good thing for the Patriots.
Yeah, I still think my concerns with just to go back to your point before about, switching places.
Yeah.
My concern with the defense is more personnel wise. They're so banged up. Like, it comes with the injuries. Like, I'm not concerned about them performance wise. It's just, who are they putting out there in the secondary right now? And I'm sure we'll get into that, but I still think performance wise, I still buy into this defensive front a ton. I like the secondary when they're healthy. They're just not healthy.
Yeah. The front is playing well. That's the main point of what I'm getting at. Is that
we do like 30 seconds on Christian Barmore because he's
that was what was coming next. The front is playing well, right? Because if you're a good first and second down defense, that usually means that your front is playing well, right? Because you're stopping the run, you're stopping play action, you're stopping things in the front seven, and that's what you like to see. So the front is working. The front is doing its job. Christian Barmore, PFF still doesn't like him. I had a little bit of an argument with one of my guys over there about the grading on Christian Barmore from this Jets.
You know what? When they put kickers in their mock draft simulator, we can take PFF seriously. Until then,
PFF still doesn't like Barmore. They claim that he blows gaps too much and is too undisciplined against the run. It's tanking his grade, yada, yada, yada. Okay, whatever. But the main point about Barmore, and I posted a few clips about this on Twitter as well, is what a revelation he has been at making plays behind the line of scrimmage in the run game, right? And finally, the Patriots have a guy, and they're allowing him to do it more, which I think is a little bit surprising to some, but they're having him shoot gaps, right? They're having him go make plays and go get the football. The play that he made on fourth down to come from basically like a 4-eye technique over the right tackle. The play was aimed to hit the B gap on the other side of the line. And Barmore crosses the face of the guard at the snap and goes all the way down the line to make the stop on fourth down from basically one side of the line of scrimmage to the other. And you talk about the explosiveness to be able to get that initial penetration, right, to get around the guard and get into the backfield, but then the range to then chase it down and go basically coast to coast, tackle to tackle. That's the type of plays that you see from Barmore that make you go, wow.
Yeah, it's kind of funny that I asked him how much he'd watch Richard Seymour. We talked to him yesterday. I asked him how much he'd watch Richard Seymour, and he wouldn't really let on. He was like, "Oh yeah, I've watched a lot of guys." And I'm like, "Well, is Seymour included? Like, what do you think of him?" He goes, "Oh yeah, I like him because he's tall and has long arms, and I'm tall and I have long arms." And I know Bill said it a number of times last week that there's nobody like Richard Seymour, and that's true. But in terms of mold, Barmore feels like as close as you can get. And you mentioned, the athleticism and the ability to go side to side. It's just, you don't really see that from guys his size. It's rare. It's really rare. And it can be such a weapon. Yeah,
he made another play in the run game from the backside 5 technique over the tackle, all the way across the line of scrimmage, running down the line of scrimmage. Lauren's guy forced the runner to cut back inside, and he cuts back inside, and here comes Christian Barmore at 310 pounds, working his way down the line of scrimmage to make the tackle. You see these plays, and although it's still a little bit inconsistent, it's kind of boom or bust right now from him against the run. He has really stepped up, I would say, as a run defender and made more plays in the run game than what I was expecting coming in. When we talked about him when the Patriots drafted him, definitely thought that he was going to be more of a situational pass rusher as a rookie, right? Somebody that was only going to play predominantly in their pass rush packages on second and long, third downs, things of that nature. He's played a lot more than that. He's a guy that I think is really already trending towards being an every down player for the Patriots. So talk about a draft class, Alex. If Barmore continues to pan out this way, Mac continues to go this way, Mac, Barmore 1-2 in this draft class, we might look back on this in 10 years and be like, they got 2 cornerstones with those guys.
Yeah, it really feels like it. It really does. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide. On the back end in the secondary, definitely some reasons to be concerned about that back end. They ended up evening it out by the end of the game with Mike White in the game. They picked him off twice. That definitely helped.
I mean, Mike White is better than the second overall pick in the draft this year.
So
that's got to mean something.
So
is that good when your second overall pick gets outplayed by a journeyman, like a 26-year-old journeyman from Western Kentucky? Does that mean you're moving in the right way as a franchise? Like, refresh my memory, because I don't think that's what's supposed to happen. I know it's what's happening for the New York Jets, but I don't think you want your second overall pick, the guy you insisted, the guy you could have had Justin Fields, you could have had Mac Jones. Nah, we're going to take the guy from BYU who turtled against Coastal, who gets outplayed by Mike White. Is that what a franchise who knows what they're doing does? Like, am I off base here? I'm sorry. I hate the Jets so much.
Oh my!
I'm with Bill. Whatever his fight is, I'm right there with him.
Alex Barth or Bill Belichick?
I lived with too many Jets fans in college.
Did you see Morgan Moses getting his feels about Bill running up the score on the Jets?
I did, and I'll give you the quote from Bill Belichick in 2007 about running up the score. Quote, "I've been coaching for too long. I remember being on that side. When I was coaching defense, it was my job to keep the score down, not theirs. When you're playing defense, it's your job to stop them. It's not the offense's job to not score. It's like I tell the offense, what the bleep do you think I send you guys out there for? To punt? We have a punt team for that. It's not your job. Your job's to go out there and score points. If you come off the field, you haven't scored points, you haven't done your job," end quote. If you don't want somebody to run up the score on you, don't let them score and score back. It's that simple. There doesn't need to be any more conversation than that. All right. If the only time I fault a coach for running up the score, look, if you're up that big, you should probably take important players out of the game because you don't want them getting hurt. But if you want to leave them in the game, all the power to you. Score 70, score 80 for all I care. It's not your job to stop your team. That's the other team's job. Running up the score in the NFL. Get the hell out of here.
Okay. Let me rant over. Let me ask you this question and pose this question to the group here. Would you rather see Juwan Williams at outside corner with Jalen Mills in the slot, or Miles Bryant in the slot and leave Mills and JC Jackson where they're at?
So
because that's where we're at. That's where we're at.
I think you missed some options there, but when we talk about
Sean Wade.
So first off, when we talk about it's the Jets, this is where it's the Jets applies to Juwan Williams. How he's looked all year, I'm not going to jump back on the bandwagon because he played well against the Jets. He played well with the Jets.
We can get to Juwan here in a second, but keep going.
So I think that there's an option. I think Miles Bryant's best at a deep safety, and with Devin McCourty potentially missing time, as you reported earlier today, I think you're better up. So look at it this way. If you're putting Miles Bryant, who I know came in as a corner, but I don't know about you, I feel better with him about him as a safety. I think that's where he presents his most value to the team. So if you're now playing Miles Bryant in the slot, you're playing Adrian Phillips on the back end, you're now playing 2 players out of position. And we know they don't want to do that. We know Bill doesn't like doing that. I know they say, oh, we're all defensive backs in the room, whatever. You're taking 2 guys out of spots where they can be more impactful. If it's me, I leave Phillips in the box. I leave Bryant deep. You may have to put some help because you want a good tackler back there. And as much as I love Miles Bryant, he struggled as a tackler.
Right.
I think it's time to recall D'Angelo Ross from the practice squad or Sean Davis. I think those are the 2 directions you can go. You either recall D'Angelo Ross, try him out in the slot and leave everybody else where they are. Or if you think Miles Bryant's your slot corner, then I think you recall Sean Davis. You put him back there at deep safety. And that way you're not juggling Adrian Phillips, because I think Adrian Phillips presents too much value in the box. Kyle Duggar as well presents too much value in the box to move those guys forward. The other thing they can do, they worked out 3 slot corners last week. I know DJ Hayden was one. The other 2 names are escaping me off the top of my head.
Brian Poole is a solid
Brian
player.
Poole is another one. Well, he's more outside, right? Or is he slot?
No, he's a slot guy. He's a nickel. He was really good for a while there. Not so good recently, obviously. That's why he's unemployed. But he was once upon a time a very steady inside player.
And then the other thing is you have Sean Wade, who hasn't practiced, who if he comes back, I'd go with Shaun Wade. If he's healthy, I'd go Shaun Wade in the slot, Miles Bryant deep, leave the outside corners where they are. Assuming Shaun Wade can't play, I think the answer here lies beyond the active roster. I think it's bringing in somebody off the practice squad, or they now have a roster spot, right, with Harvey Long going on IR.
Yeah.
See if McCourty has to go on IR. Either elevating Sean Davis or elevating D'Angelo Ross or signing one of these corners they worked out.
So two things. One, Juwan Williams' tape against the Jets was good.
And Adrian Colbert's apparently a free agent now.
Yes,
so I'll throw his name in there.
So Juwan Williams' tape against the Jets was pretty good. And the one thing that I consistently see with him when he gets into trouble in the secondary is poor technique, poor eye discipline. And really what the two things that stand out the most are had all this conversation earlier about quarterbacks playing within structure, right? Within the structure, within the pocket, within the structure of the system. Cornerbacks also have to play within structure, especially in a man coverage heavy system. But just in general, you have to keep your shape, right? You have to keep your structure. And a lot of the times when Juwan Williams get into trouble is because he is basically playing man-to-man coverage like he is on an island, right? Whereas the Patriots want you to play man-to-man coverage with your leverage based off of where your help is. So if you have a post safety over the top and you have a robber in the middle of the field or a low hole player, right? You want to play outside leverage and you want to be able to cover anything up the field and outside. So you have these leverage-based rules for the cornerbacks, and Juwan Williams has a really difficult time with blowing that. Now, against the Jets, he stayed within the confines and within the framework of the system defensively a lot more, and he was serviceable. So the question is can he consistently do that? Or is he going to revert back to the guy that got burned on that 4th down play against Houston, right? Technique was all over the place, gets spin around like a top because he's not playing his leverage and gets beat over the top for a big play. That's the issue with Juwan Williams, and then he can have good games like he did last week against the Jets. Now, the other name, and it's escaping me now, who's the wide receiver that they had in training camp that everybody thought was going to save their offense? The speedy guy from Miami.
Jeff Ross. You already forgot about not Jeff Ross. Jeff Thomas. Jeff Ross, the comedian. Jeff Thomas.
Jeff Thomas.
Forgot about Jeff Thomas?
There we go. Jeff Thomas.
The greatest Patriots wide receiver that never was.
I feel like we are getting into Jeff Thomas territory with Shaun Wade a little bit. And that's no disrespect to Shaun Wade, but everybody is asking me about Shaun Wade. When is Shaun Wade going to play? Like he is some savior to the Patriots secondary as soon as he gets over this concussion and gets out there. I don't see him as a savior by any means. I don't think that he's even close to that. But when he was at Ohio State, he was far better in the slot than he was on the boundary. When they played him inside his junior season or his sophomore season, whichever one it was, he was good. Then they moved him to the outside his last year at Ohio State, and he really struggled. So does he have potential as a slot corner in the league? I think the answer to that question is yes. So maybe they are able to work him out in the slot a little bit more and get something from him when he gets available and when he hopefully gets over this concussion. So do I like any other options all that much? No. Am I concerned? Where's my concern level with the secondary? And you can answer that question too, Alex. It's not red alert. It's not DEFCON 5, but we're pretty high right now, I would say, with the secondary holding this team back from really being able to make a run.
Yeah, and I'll just throw this out there. Having Stephon Gilmore certainly would have helped, but Stephon Gilmore doesn't play in the slot. He doesn't play deep safety. Right. The issue isn't that the issue is that they just didn't have enough bodies. They didn't have enough depth. I've been saying this since training camp. Even if they still had Stephon Gilmore.
Not to pat ourselves on the back, but we've been talking about cornerback depth since minicamp on this show, right? And that was when we thought they were getting Stephon Gilmore back, and we were still concerned about it. So it's definitely a not a good situation to be in, especially in 2021, to have holes in the secondary is not where you want to be.
No, it's not. And again, it's a bodies thing. It's just they were a corner short throughout camp. We talked about this when Justin Bethel was playing, and we were talking about, well, can Justin Bethel give them something at outside corner? They might need. We were talking about them bringing in Richard Sherman. We were talking about them bringing in all these guys.
Yeah,
and it obviously never came to fruition. And here we are. But they've been short a corner. They were short a corner before they traded Gilmore. They've been, they need, and maybe they'll get somebody at the deadline. I don't know. I know they're kind of up against it with the cap. Maybe they sign one of these guys that we talked about earlier, DJ Hayden, Brian Poole, whoever, but they're short a corner. They are. They've been short a corner. The depth, or let me put it this way, the Patriots secondary, the secondary they built from like 2017 to 2020 was so unbelievable. Not just because of the top end talent, and they had tremendous top end talent. Stephon Gilmore, Devin McCourty, Patrick Chung, right? It was that they also had tremendous depth. They had guys like Jason McCourty. They had a guy like Deron Harmon, these sort of players.
Yeah.
And that the fact that they kept that group together for 3 seasons, 17, 18, 19, they really had that whole group. They had not just the best top end players in the league in the secondary, but they had the best secondary depth of any team in the league. And I thought what happened last year was that top end talent for the most part was still in place. They replaced Patrick Chung with Adrian Phillips. That top end talent was still in place, but the depth was gone, right? They lost Deron Harmon. Jason McCourty was soon to go, et cetera. Now that depth's all gone. And they came into the year theoretically with that same top end talent of JC Jackson, Devin McCourty, Stephon Gilmore. Now you're seeing, that top end talent isn't available for one reason or the other. And in past years, we would have felt fine because you had Jason McCourty to turn to in this situation.
Right.
You had Deron Harmon to turn to in this situation. Those guys aren't there anymore. And that's kind of that was the bigger issue. It's not that they didn't pay Stephon Gilmore. It's that they didn't have anybody ready to go if he wasn't going to play.
Yeah.
That to me is the bigger issue in itself.
This all relates, and I hate to put it all on him or all on that draft selection, but Jawan Williams in the 2019 second round, right? Like that's
a big part of it.
That's the guy that was supposed to be the replacement for Stephon Gilmore, right? Not saying that he was going to be Gilmore and be a defensive player of the year, as Atlas has made an appearance.
Naturally.
He, not saying that, but he was supposed to be the guy that came in and took that CB2 spot, right? That took that second outside cornerback spot when Gilmore eventually moved on. Where at that point, he can't do it, right? Jawan Williams is incapable of doing it, and here we are. Now, last thing real quick here, a lot of in the chat about trade deadline stuff and things like that. And I just want people to really curtail their expectations for the Patriots at the trade deadline. Miguel Pat's cap has them at $4 million in space right now. They do not have a lot of money. They're pretty much right up against the cap in terms of players on IR, likely to be earned incentives. There's going to be things that they have to pay for the rest of the season from a roster standpoint. And they don't have a ton of money to waste on a trade. And it doesn't feel like the Patriots are... Remember when they traded for Talib, was that 2012, right? That team in 2012, you could make the argument, was an Aqib Talib away from a Super Bowl, right? This team is not an Aqib Talib away from a Super Bowl. So to move the money around, to convert salary on somebody else's contract, to sign an extension in season to lower their cap number, all the little salary cap tricks to add void years to somebody's contract to spread out cap hits, all those little tricks that you can do, those are tricks that Super Bowl contenders, win now mode teams do. Not teams that are 3-4 with the rookie quarterback. You can't hamstring yourself in the long term for a short-term gain with a team that's not 6-1, right? You just don't do that.
Yeah, no, I don't think I see people saying Xavier Rhodes, Allen Robinson, whatever.
Right.
Yeah, not this year. For a number of reasons, not this year. You do that in the offseason.
Talk to me in the offseason, right? In the offseason,
Right.
we could have those types of conversations about them getting a number one corner in here or them paying another playmaker or something like that. Right now, this team is going to have to ride it. It feels like the team's going to have to ride or die with the guys that they have for the most part. Could they make a trade for a guy on a rookie deal or something cheap just to get another body in here? Absolutely. But in terms of the big splash move at the deadline, seems very unlikely.
Yeah. Can I bring up one more point unrelated here? I don't know if you have anything more of the game, but I just do have one. Something I just saw that's very interesting. Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I guess this is just something I've always said for a long time, and me and you have argued about this, and it's just interesting to hear it in this context. So I guess Tom Brady on his show he does with Jim Gray, said that the early 2000s Dolphins were his toughest opponent that he's faced. I have long maintained, because we like to do the list of the potential dynasties that the Patriots ended, right? The Rams, the Seahawks, the Colts, right? I've always felt like the early 2000s Dolphins get left off that list. You look at the defense they had: Jason Taylor, Zach Thomas, Patrick Surtain, Sean Merritt. I mean, they just all over that defense. Great players. And then offensively, they had peak Ricky Williams at a time when that kind of running back was an elite offensive weapon. They had some good receivers: Randy McMichael, Chris Chambers. I think they had David Boston for a year. I know Jay Fiedler's not the best quarterback, but he was capable. Like, had those teams not had to go through Brady, so here's the way I've always phrased it. Had the Dolphins been the team that left the AFC, because in 2001, they realigned the divisions, right? They added the 32nd team. And the Colts moved from the AFC East to the newly created AFC North. Was the Central, became the AFC North. If the Dolphins were the AFC South, sorry, the Colts moved to the South, even though they're North. If the Dolphins had moved to the South instead of the Colts, what would those, like, had the Dolphins not had to go through Brady and the Patriots, those teams, what would they?
Well, that also would have been fascinating, because that means that Brady and Manning would have
been twice a year, right? Automatically. But, if however you want to put it, if Brady doesn't come along and the Dolphins stay in the East, what would that Dolphins team they had a Super Bowl roster. They did. They had a Super Bowl roster. I just think it's very interesting Brady said that, because I've said that for a long time, that those teams those teams are wildly underrated. Yes, great uniforms in that era as well.
It feels like that team, if you went back and watched, and unfortunately I don't have all 22 available to me from the early 2000s, but if
you can find it if you really look.
If I somehow got my hands on it, I feel like that team might have been the first team that came up with the rush 4, drop 7, flood the middle of the field, and get to Brady with a 4-man rush, right?
And they could do it because they had Jason Taylor.
Right. The 2007 Giants blueprint that everybody points to might have actually started with the Dolphins in the Jason Taylor era, and then kind of continued on. So really interesting point there from Brady. You wouldn't have guessed that, but I guess that's pretty makes some sense, right? That's what I'm trying to get out. Makes some sense.
Yeah. No, they had I forgot, they had Junior Seau too. They had what I forget how to pronounce this guy's name. Adway Ungundlie. He had 15 sacks one year. Like, that team was just good. They had some really good teams back then. We don't give the Patriots enough credit for. I mean, they did, because it's not like those Dolphins teams got one in. They didn't get one in, and I thought they had some promise.
Okay, Alex and I will be back on the show on Friday to preview Chargers Patriots. This is a really fun one. Alex, if you covered Brandon Staley, you would hate his guts, because Brandon Staley is like if nerd football Twitter, if all of us nerds on football Twitter with all the analytics and everything were an NFL head coach, they would be Brandon Staley, right?
So bring on the math. I'll take Bill Belichick against the math any day.
He is one of the most aggressive play callers on 4th down in the league. He plays too high defense, at least pre-snap, a vast majority of the time, gives it up against the run, doesn't care, right? And plays the way that all of the nerds and all of the math tell you to play football. That's what the Chargers blueprint is. I'm really excited to see this matchup, because this is an old school mindset in Belichick against a new school guy in Staley, who is a huge age gap, rookie head coach, all those types of things as well, and two really good young quarterbacks. So I think this is going to be a fascinating game to watch how the Patriots offense attacks the Chargers defense, because the Chargers defense is going viral right now, right? Everybody is latching on to this Brandon Staley scheme and what the Rams are doing, and what the Chargers are doing, and what Vic Fangio is doing in Denver, and that's all related. And this is like the new Seattle 3, right? We've asked the coaching staff a lot of questions about that Seattle defense in the early 2010s and how the league kind of adopted that and adjusted and all that kind of stuff. The new Seattle 3 is this Charger Ram defense. So it's going to be really fun to see how the Patriots go out and attack it. Right now, Los Angeles is 32nd in the league against the run, dead last. So
and the Patriots finally have their offensive line combination in place.
You would think that they're going to run it down your throats, but I would also think that the Chargers are going to think that they're going to run it down their throats. So it should be a really good chess match between McDaniels and Staley. And Staley goes back to John Carroll University. He was a coach there. And so McDaniels and him have a pretty good relationship. So this is low-key a very fun game here on Sunday with the Chargers.
And don't sleep on the special teams, because they may have fixed a lot, but those math coaches don't care much for special teams, and that hasn't been fixed a ton. And look at what they did to them last year on special teams. I mean, it was a full-on pantsing of the Chargers special teams unit. So
sometimes I listen
what were you going to say?
Sometimes I listen to Brandon Staley's press conferences and really think he's just pandering to the nerds on Twitter, because he gets up there and he goes on these long tropes about how you don't have to run the ball effectively to be a good play action team, and you don't have to play single high to stop the run, and you don't have to punt on fourth down with as much frequency as teams are doing it, and all these. He is the. You know how we've talked a lot offline, Alex, about how baseball is going with the nerds, right? The Red Sox, the Dodgers, all these teams.
And how's that working for them?
Following the nerds. And Brandon Staley is doing what baseball is doing. And it's more exciting. It's more fun, obviously, than the nerds ruining baseball. But it's just really fascinating to see, because you really can't get more polar opposite in terms of approach and the way that they call games and the systems that they run on offense and defense. It's staring directly at an opposition that's totally different than what the Patriots do.
Right. It's old school versus new school. It's going to be a ton of fun.
It's going to be a lot of fun. We'll talk about that one on Friday. We'll have some more about this matchup between old school versus new school. The Patriots facing the Los Angeles Chargers. But until then, signing off for Alex Barth, I'm Evan Lazar. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you Friday.